All right, everybody, we are here now with one of the two grand finalists, Ixidor. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing just fine, thanks.
Glad to hear it. Glad to hear it. So, I went ahead and just comprised a couple of interview questions that I wanted to run with you. And first off, congratulations to making it where you are. I mean, this has been one hell of an event. We've been doing this since April, and now here we are in October, finally closing the doors here within
Yeah.
hopefully the next week or so, if everybody can get together and do these finals. But without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into these questions. So first things first, how are you feeling after making it to the grand finals after all the hard work that you had to do to get to where you are?
I'm feeling fairly accomplished. When I put together my team, it wasn't really play tested, so I honestly wasn't sure. I was fairly certain I could make it through the gym challenge due to the fact that each gym had their own type that I could play around. But once I got into the teams that were balanced type wise, I wasn't sure how far I would make it. So feeling pretty good about how far I've made it so far.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's really good. So, speaking about your team, what made you decide to use the team that you're using, and why did you think that it would get you all the way through the event?
So honestly, the whole crux of the team started with Metagross because Metagross has been my favorite Pokemon since Generation 3 came out. So
Solid
a lot
guy.
of stuff came out to help support that. And when I looked at the ban list, when I looked at not the ban list, the restricted list, I was like, what Pokemon in here have I had the most experience with using in competitive that I would want? And immediately Gliscor jumped out at me as my go-to physical wall. So when I had Metagross and Gliscor, the entire team sort of collapsed around those two.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Two very solid Pokemon. And, talking a little bit about your team, you definitely have some oddballs that I think some people weren't expecting. Was that intentional? Just something out of the meta? Or were you just thinking that they just best balanced your
Um,
team?
Honestly, it's a little bit because I tend to prefer to use Pokemon I like over Pokemon that are just in meta. And the second thing is I haven't really been keeping up too much with the competitive meta since fifth generation came out.
Sure.
So I'm a little behind in that regard. So mostly it was just I'm going to pick Pokemon I like. I'm going to pick Pokemon that I know have worked for me in the past. And I'm going to pick a team that I think works well together.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, next question I have for you, still about kind of the main event, is who, when you were going through all the different gym leaders and E4 and even the champion, when you're going through everybody in the main event, who would you say was the most challenging? And if you want to have a runner up, that's fine, but who would you say was that obstacle that you had to get over?
Um, was when I went to the Elite Four, and it would either be the Dark Elite Four member or the Poison Elite Four member. If I would have to pick one of the two, I'd probably say the Poison Elite Four member,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
just because they had a team that was extremely difficult to deal with.
Nice.
The main
Great.
issue I had with the Dark Gym Leader was I ended up bringing three Pokemon that were weak to Dark, and that was a mistake I realized about halfway through the challenge. But yeah, probably the Poison Gym Leader, just because they had a really solid team and a lot of really strong pokes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Awesome. So the next thing is, a couple of little insight thoughts here. So if you could change one thing about the event, coming from a player's perspective, what would you change?
The one thing I will say that was a bit, crap, what's the word I'm looking for? I wouldn't say disconcerting, but a bit off-putting maybe, was the wide variance in skill level when going through the gym challenge. So some of the gym leaders, like the Bug Gym Leader and the Steel Gym Leader, were very difficult to get through.
Mm-hmm.
While some of the other gym leaders maybe had less experience or didn't have teams that were as well crafted, and it didn't feel nearly as difficult. So some of the gym battles felt like true like gym battle challenges, others felt more like just okay, I'm just taking a pit stop real quick before I'm continuing on.
Sure,
And
absolutely.
if a more consistent challenge if would probably be my biggest improvement. Well, I recognize it's not exactly the easiest thing to accomplish, but that would be the one thing I would suggest so far.
Well, especially looking forward now that we've done this event and we've been, I've been able to kind of look at it and fine tune it myself. I now understand a little bit how I could go about that recruiting process or that interview process a little bit better to get more refined gym leaders. But the other thing that was really important is remember that only 4 of you guys made it through. And a
Mhm.
lot of that sure was due to time difficulty, but if we had too many hard hitters or too many challenging gyms or Eat 4 or what have you, it would make it a lot more discouraging. I wanted it to at least be doable by most people. That was the goal. But that is definitely a concern from not only you, but many others have made that very similar comment. But good thing there. So
Mhm.
the next thing I will ask is, when you made it to the finals, one thing that I thought was somewhat of a salty note for me at least was there's only 4 people in this last final event, and for you as a player, do you think that only having 4 people took away from the event for you?
I would say when I first started the event that it did take away from it for me, but when I actually started going through the matches and going through just how stressful
Yeah.
these finals matches are, I'm sitting there going, you know what? I don't know if I want to go through another round of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with
So,
me doing it with a double elimination format. If we did have a
yeah.
full 8, it would be a very much it'd be just as long as the gym event.
Yeah, if you actually had a full eight, I don't know if you'd want to do a double elimination, or at least not to the same level that's here. But
Sure.
yeah, I'm actually, yeah, like I said, initial impression, I would say yes, but after actually competing, only having 4 people in the finals really hasn't taken that much away from me. The one thing I would say is that I'm actually kind of upset I haven't been able to properly fight Limey, because he was in the other bracket and he did not get to the losers bracket, so I have not been able to fight him. So I'm wondering if even a round robin style tournament would have been a better option, but that's
Could
not
have.
my call, obviously.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, there's still, an opportunity for you guys just to have a good, for fun's sake, contention match. But at this point, the big reason why I didn't want to go for round robin is, with round robin, it's points rather than a finalist. So I wanted it to be a little bit more similar format to what you would see in a more traditional Pokemon event.
Yeah, I gotcha.
So, and I am definitely planning to do this event again. So, one of the big reasons I'm doing these interviews is not just to get your insight, but to also see how it can be improved for the future. But one big curveball that's going to change everything is Sun and Moon will be out by the time I do the next event.
Yes.
And the question then is, what do you think is the number one thing that will have the biggest impact from Sun and Moon to an event like this?
There are 2 things that immediately strike out in my mind. First is the new crop of Pokemon. Every time a new generation of Pokemon comes out, there's always like 2 or 3 surprises we get that like completely shift the meta. Like when 5th Gen came out, it was Ferrothorn and Landorus.
Oh, yes.
When 6th Gen came out, it was Greninja. And now 6th Gen's coming out. What's going to shift up the meta this time? What's going to make some changes? And also, second big thing is sort of where we had Mega Evolution that brought things like Mega Mawile to the table that completely screwed over everyone. We have Z moves, and
Yeah.
I don't know 100% how they function yet. We're gonna find out when the games come out, obviously. But I don't know how those are gonna play into competitive battling, if they actually play a part at all.
Yeah, that's the big thing. There's a lot of variance in what people think is going to be how Z moves work. Do we know? Because from what the trailers look like, they're just like one-hit KOs, except for the exception of the Eevee one. But that's the big thing is for factoring in an event like this, where it's a little bit more off the cuff. It's a little bit different. A little bit fringe, how to factor in for something like Z moves. Like, trust me, figuring out how we were going to balance Mega Evolutions and how we were going to allow that was definitely a discussion that was brought to the table. So, yeah, absolutely. Will be very interesting to see Sun and Moon's implications to the next Iwaku Challenge.
Yeah.
So the next thing is, kind of looking at the event and, kind of picking it apart a little bit, is one of the most difficult things about this event was the ban and restricted list and using points to buy your Pokemon and what have you. Then this applied for both players and gym leaders. But if you could change one part of that specific thing, how would you change it from your player's perspective, of course?
So, funny thing is, that's actually what drew me to this tournament in the first place, apart from the fact it was a Pokemon tournament, because if you had just said, like, say, use Smoke on standard tier, I would have been a little off-put, because the way to win would have just been, okay, pick 6 really strong overused Pokemon as opposed to pick a team of what you like. With the system you actually set up with the whole stat total has to be below a certain amount and you can only use 1 Pokemon from the restricted list, then suddenly you have to play around a bit more with your team, and it's more viable to use a more varied team, and as a result, everyone sees teams that are different. I haven't seen a single sort of standard-ish looking OU team in this entire tournament yet, which was one of the biggest joys actually of going through this. So I actually would say don't change a thing. The only thing I would say is, depending on what happens to Sun and Moon, maybe change around the banned and restricted lists, but as far as the format goes, I think it's actually fairly solid.
Well, one thing that's definitely been brought up, there are a couple of Pokemon that, for example, Dragonite. Dragonite is the most used Pokemon in this entire event, both by players and even thanks to our Dragon Gym Leader, we even see Dragonite being a wall for that as well.
I'd be willing to bet you if we had a Flying Gym Leader, he'd be in that one too.
Well, originally we did have a Flying Gym Leader. We had to do a little last-minute changes, and yes, he was there as well. So, absolutely, I think Pokemon, now after looking at it, again, a Pokemon like Dragonite might not deserve banned, but definitely restricted due to how used he was. He was just a solid snag for a lot of people. And the big reason why I wanted to do this is exactly like you said. I didn't want this to be another overused Smuggin event, or I wanted to have some people have the ability to have some flair and to some out of the ballpark things, like a couple Ubers that you might not normally see, and also balance that out with maybe some underused Pokemon that you wouldn't normally see. Again, you're a standing staple of that right there. So, yeah, I'm glad that you have enjoyed that, but there's definitely going to be some slight tweaks. Panda, the other person we've interviewed so far, strongly suggests that we unban Mega Kangaskhan. What do you think of that?
I say keep that thing on the ban list as hard as possible. Like, seriously, not let that thing in.
That is just a joke. We're just teasing. No way would we ever let Mega Kangaskhan into a real event.
Unless you want to see everyone pick Mega Kangaskhan on their team.
Yep, exactly. And that's just a joke, but absolutely good. Glad to hear it. So with only 2 people left, you're in the grand finals, and we have one more match between Maxim and Snoopy, and between those 2 players, who is it that you're the most worried about facing in the grand final?
I'm still tossing it around my head. The weird thing is I've actually fought both of them before, and Maxim has a really solid team that's got a couple Pokemon that are very difficult for me to play around, and it was a giant mind game between ourselves when we were playing, and it was like, okay, if we make one wrong prediction, we're basically hosed.
Yeah?
But Snoopy has a lot of really dickish Pokemon on his team.
Yeah, there's a lot of bulk, and again, I was kind of looking at this as, Maxim and Snoopy, I would say, definitely have a more tried and true team. They're the closest to what you would say being a typical OU plus some team. So they're definitely using what is strong, what's good, and you're taking things from a slightly different angle, so it's definitely going to be very interesting seeing it in the end. But
if I had to give my honest opinion,
yes,
probably Maxim.
Okay.
Just on the basis of there was one match when we fought. There was a second match that I won almost entirely due to hacks.
Nice.
Like, if I hadn't had hacks step in about 2 or 3 times in that battle, there's a very good chance I would have lost it. Whereas when I was fighting Snoopy, it was a difficult battle, but I never felt like I was saved because of a random crit or a random status.
Absolutely. Good. Well, like I said, we only have those 2 left. We are going to be very interested in watching the semifinals so that we can see your guys' final event. And, those are all the questions I have for you, but just kind of close things up, are there any other final words that you'd like to just share? Any shout-outs or any, last little bit of moments you'd like to share here?
Well, I would like to actually thank you for starting up this tournament, because I've been wanting to do a Pokemon tournament for a little while now, but I've never really been able to find anything that I could join in. And of course, everyone wants to run, standard Smogon OU, which has gotten boring for me because you see the same 15 or so Pokemon in every single team you face if you actually want to win. So running something like this was a breath of fresh air, and also the whole idea of the gym challenge actually being a challenge as opposed to just sort of a run-of-the-mill thing you do in the games.
No, good, absolutely. You're very
I'd
well.
also like to thank all the gym leaders and Elite Four members who were very patient with challenge after challenge after challenge of people going through this gauntlet. Particularly like the first 5 or so who got the most.
Yes, absolutely. I know Jinx, our very first bug gym leader, was one of the most difficult challenges for people to face due to his game knowledge, and his team was very solid. But
Yeah, he had a very solid team.
absolutely, and then he was what I would say is like he cut out the weeds of the competition. If you didn't,
He
beat
was the
Jinx,
culling essentially.
Yes, if you didn't beat Jinx, you needed to look at your team and reevaluate before progressing. So, absolutely. Well, thank you, Ixie. I'm really looking forward to all the battles that we have yet to come, even though there's not many left. And, we have the semifinals to watch, and then your guys' grand final 3 of 5. So.
Oh, Lord. Don't put the pressure on yet, please.
Oh, man. Well, nonetheless, I will see you in the grand finals, and until then, farewell, my friend.
All right, you too.